friends come and visit our studio? Catch them all in Muse Talks.
So welcome back to Muse Talks, a series where we talk to interesting people with interesting jobs. And our guest today is special and long friend to Muse, Panuksmi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Panuksmi.
Good to see you both.
Good to see you. Yes.
Good friends, these two. So why don't you just give an introduction to yourself, what you do, official job title and such?
Okay. What do I do? I'm a producer
Okay.
of film, documentaries, and also multimedia installations for museums and public spaces. I arrived in Singapore in 2004, and I never looked back. I came from Montreal, Canada, where I had my training for film in Canada, where I did my university studies. And yeah, that's about it. And I think maybe in these last 18 years that I've been here, what's been most interesting is that the work that I do, because it's not just film, it allows us to collaborate with people from different specialties or different, sort of focus, not just in the film industry, but people of anything from science to historians and things like this. Yeah.
So if I were to write a recruitment drive and I need to write a short job description of a film producer, what should I put in there?
I think it depends on if they really specialize just in documentary, just in film or TV, or if they do everything. I think in Singapore, most of us do a bit of everything to survive. I think it's very difficult to be solely a film producer here because there's just not enough films being produced. And for sure, the budgets are not like they are, for example, in Europe or North America. So yeah, we do tend to take other things. That's why, in our case, we also do documentaries and things for television. That's the reality. But I think first and foremost, it also depends because in many places in the world, being a producer, sometimes you're specialized. So you can be a producer who's a writer.
Yeah.
So you could be a creative producer, and you could be just a producer who brings in the money.
Yeah.
In Singapore, I think we do a bit of all of that
Right.
because it's very difficult to have several producers on one project.
project.
Yeah.
Because who would we all have to get some kind of remuneration. And
Understand.
yeah.
So you say you were here since 2004, but I guess you're already in the industry prior to that. So how long is what year do you put okay, I'm a producer from this year onwards. What year is that? How many years has it been then?
Well, I've never really counted because when I first started after my studies, it took a while to sort of really feel that I could actually tell people that I was a producer because I worked in advertising. I just didn't consider producing, and casting for advertising. To me, was not a producer. I think my first time I really felt like I was producing maybe would have been in the year 2000 and around 2000 and something.
Before you came to Singapore.
No, it was before I came to Singapore. We had a film in Berlin, and it went to Clermont-Ferrand. It was just a short film, but it was a film that was shot in Indonesia, where my parents are from, and where I was born but didn't grow up in. It's not the country where I grew up in, but so it was actually a documentary that was based on still photography, black and white photos, that was shot, that was filmed in a prison in Jakarta.
Wow.
So yeah, we were actually very surprised. We did it with really no money. It really, it was 16 millimeter, and the whole thing was just very. It was a craft. It was a project we felt that we really believed in the story and all that, and then it traveled to really a lot of
And this
festivals.
was early 2000, you know?
Yeah, there would be just before I moved here, so 2000, 2001.
What was the title of the film?
10 minutes before dying.
10 minutes before dying.
10 menit menjelang kematian.
Is it like about inmates on a death row or something?
Well, I think they're on death row for sure, but it was actually based on. It started off because there was a graffiti on the wall, which is a poem, which is about 10 minutes before dying.
Wow.
And so from that, we kind of just took the photographs of this photographer, and then we pieced it together. Into a story that we felt, because I think anybody who's a creative person, the idea of creating is about something that lives on after you die. So we felt that poem really, I think translated that very well for us.
Okay. And when do you guys meet each other?
2004. 5.
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah.
What was that? Was the first project together? Or?
Yeah,
It
I
was
would
for the
say
museum, right?
Yeah, a museum project. Yeah, we worked on a museum project where we did a lot of the audio post at Muse
Yeah.
when they were still on Bukit Paso Road.
Early days.
Yes, early days. The pioneers.
That's right. So we met Shariza and Kaz Sato. Kaz,
Yeah.
we call him. Yeah.
Okay.
And we
Such an
continue to-
honor.
And it's like we continue to work with them on most of our projects. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure, well, I don't know, since 20 years or 30 years, so many interesting stories, so many interesting memories you had.
Yeah, but I think the memories I had are more about the encounters I made with individuals.
Right.
You know, because I have to say that there was a break in between the 30 years. I had children. So that was very important to me. And I have to say, some women are really good at really multitasking that. But I felt that the years of my children were very important in that when they were 3 and they were 5 and they were 8, I could never take it back. So, yeah, so I kind of took a little break and then just started doing stuff that I could actually work from home. So projects, you know, project-driven kind of things. But I think it's also, for example, the first production house I worked for in Montreal, it was very difficult to sort of, how can I say, infiltrate the industry when I was younger. But there was one production company who was, interestingly enough, their specialty was dance film. And they introduced me to a whole world of festivals and, producers that only produce dance films. And it was really great. I got to work with a lot of choreographers of diverse backgrounds, got to travel to Europe, everywhere in North America. Latin America was really wonderful, yeah. And from there, we also did some, you know, sort of television films and things like this. And then after that, we actually collaborated on a film in Bali. It was a dance film that was actually, written and directed by my partner, Michelle.
Right.
And then I became the Indonesian co-producer.
Right.
Yeah, because I was living there while we were, you know, scouting locations and meeting the dancers, casting and all that. Yeah.
So this job is not your typical behind your desk 9 to 5 kind of job, is it?
No, I think as a producer, I've never really have a behind
Yeah.
the desk 9 to 5
Yeah.
job. Yeah, yeah.
So when you first started, when you were doing the dance film, right? You were already traveling,
Yes.
and your kids were pretty young at that
Yes,
age,
but
right?
luckily, yeah. I mean, when you have a partner who can also work from home, so we always kind of work that out, our schedules to do that. And it was very interesting you say, you know, the traveling and all that. I remember one of the funniest, well, wasn't funny at the moment, but I was at the airport going to the United States, going to New York to meet some choreographers there.
Yeah.
And I was with my colleague, and I told my colleague, you'll see I'm going to have a lot of problems getting through because I'm Indonesian.
Yeah.
Right? Because even though I lived in Canada for so many years, I've kept my Indonesian nationality.
I
And of course, he's Canadian. He went through in 2 seconds. And then they were like grilling me. And then they kept telling him, like, you can go into the plane now. And he said, no, I'm going to wait for my colleague. But they were like asking me things like, because they asked me, what are you doing in New York? And I said, well, I'm meeting choreographers.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see dance performances. And they said, that's not a job. And I thought that was really funny to say to a producer, because I didn't consider myself yet a producer,
Yeah.
because I was very young.
Yeah.
That's not a job. And then, like, my colleague was just, like, waiting for me on the other end, and he just couldn't believe how long it took for me to be compared to him.
Right.
So this is something that, you know, is interesting when you like to travel and, you know, and your work requires travel. Yeah. It's, so that's one of the things. But
I guess the challenges come from every aspect of the job, even while traveling,
yeah,
not
no,
job related.
for sure. No, but I don't regret it. I mean, I had no, after it just took longer, but he just couldn't believe it. Yeah, so that was just maybe a funny anecdote that I remembered when somebody asked you, that can't be a job, you know?
Does it ever feel like a job to you now? You've done like 20 odd years of it? Or is it still an adventure for you?
Well, I'd like to say that we are privileged enough to choose what we do. So I think all of us who are doing this somehow and actually toughing it out all these years, first, you know, I mean, I think like any job, whether you're an accountant, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, whatever, I think the important thing is, you know, what makes you wake up in the morning, you know? And I think somewhere, even if you are forced to take projects, they're not necessarily in your sort of priority in terms of interest. But, you know, I think that's it. When you have also your own production company, you do have to make some concessions, some compromises. But at the same time, whether you're doing something for a small screen, for a museum, for different kinds of clients, the important thing is, I think the start of that is about, is there good writing? Are you going to put together a good team and the right team to put it together? And that, I think, is what keeps us going, because, it's like anyone else. If you're doing a job, for sure it could be really monotonous. I mean, I can't imagine what an accountant wakes up to.
Yeah.
But maybe for them it's really exciting to make
Yeah.
the books balance. And I always think about that, because I actually have friends who are accountants.
Right.
And no, so I think for everybody, whether it's a creative industry or not, I think it's that. It's like finding that thing that makes you wake up in the morning and do what you do. Yeah.
Do you have any similar feelings, like, your
Yeah.
ladies as well?
Of
You had
course,
your kids
exactly.
and young,
yeah.
and you're still working
and,
hard.
being a woman, right? And especially in this industry, there's always that thing like, oh, can they actually do it well? That thought, yeah. So for us, it's, for me, myself, I take it like, meeting new people, especially projects differ from, each project is different. Yeah, so it's how you manage your clients, and also, the team that you work with, that's more important. And, like working with people like Panuksmi and Michelle, it's not just about like, getting a job done, but really, get it done well. Yeah.
Right.
And within like a certain time frame that we have. Yeah. So we try to get it out, and, get the whole team to more or less give inputs, because sometimes, you do not know, you may think that this will work better, but, there are other ways that can, improve the whole project.
So this job, like, we're going back to being a producer, is that like a special technical skill knowledge that you got to have? Or is it just a bit more of a human management of your time, your skills, your resources?
Well, I think for me, because I don't specialize in necessarily the technical side.
Right.
I have a partner who does that. But at the same time, because I do more sort of like creative parts with him, but at the same time, you do have to know about the new technologies that come out. I won't know the nitty-gritty of it, but sometimes when they're talking about, like, say, post-production workflow. When I first heard that, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, then I said, yeah, that makes sense, because you do have to follow through that.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, first you said, here you are going through scripts, you're giving feedback on writers and putting together teams. Why do I have to learn that? But you do.
Yeah.
I think even if it's just a surface knowledge of it. So at the same time, you do have to know that. It's not just all about, I don't know, it is about meeting people. It is putting together teams, but you do have to know all these other things. I mean, Shariza can tell you all that, I'm sure, more than I can.
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as like what Panuksmi just mentioned about whether earlier on, as a producer in Singapore, we don't have really, a specific role, I guess, in a way, because we do, it's not just like getting the business or even just to do the writing. It's a bit of everything, for the producer in terms of, like, for my case, it's way back from production to, even the pre-production, all the way to the post-production. Right. So it's...
Is it like a job, like nobody else to do it, I got to do it? For a producer? Somebody screws up, I need to clean it up?
It's really comes with the budget. Really.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you're the first one there and the last one to leave.
Yes.
Right.
But that's like anything. I mean, I think if you're running an independent small production company, I think you have no choice, because you can't delegate everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean by the time you explain it to some intern or young new person on your team, you could have done it. And that's in a way that's not good also, because I understand you have to delegate, but there are certain things, I think, like, for example, working past hours that are acceptable in the workforce or on weekends or things like this.
Yeah.
If you don't get it done, you're not going to meet the deadline. And I think this is maybe something that a lot of producers do here. And I think,
we
that's
just
the
take
reality.
our craft very seriously.
You've been around for ages, both of you. What are the differences you notice, went through it yourself back then and now, that probably our listeners might want to get into the industry and they think, hey, this I don't know about this kind of thing.
Actually, there's so much change. For instance, way back when we were doing traditionally, like big machines, for example, post production, whereby you need like a proper hardware, software to get the edit going on. But now, with the digital,
Yeah, everything's on the
Yeah,
desktop and
correct.
just a few clicks away.
yes, especially mobile phones,
Right.
yeah, all those devices, they make so easy that people think anyone
Can
will
do
be
it.
able to do the job. Yeah.
Right. So, what is a good producer then to you, or a bad one?
I don't think I'm in the right position to make that choice. I mean, that decision, because I am a producer. So, I mean, and it's also very subjective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I really couldn't answer that. I think it's too complex a question. I don't think we can answer it in just one simple way. I think, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to compare, like, for example, films, right? Like Hollywood producers, they are like way advanced, because, and they specifically just do films. So I guess, it's more like a business kind of thing. And yeah, like for us, like what Panuksmi say, we don't really get many film projects in a year. Yeah.
You've
So
traveled.
it's very
sorry.
hard to kind of like, I guess, hone the skills in terms like, you just want to focus in one genre, or one medium.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to be like a bit of a jack of all trades then in this, especially in our region. Is it same as compared to the other places that you've worked at?
No, it isn't, because I mean, I'm not sure now because I've been here for 18 years now. But when I was still working over in Montreal, for example, a production company that does film won't really do commercials.
Yeah.
So they might delve into television, but television very specific to their kind of focus and their speciality. But I've never worked or collaborated with people that did, for example, here a lot of production companies also do commercials or do corporate work and all that. So I think because the industry produces more stuff there, and I think the funding allows producers to do multiple
Yeah.
projects at the same time.
Agreed. Yeah.
So let's talk about the latest collaboration between you and Muse.
The film is called Seen Unseen.
What is Seen Unseen actually? For those who haven't seen it, I've seen it, but you guys are
So what?
better positioned to
okay,
talk about it.
I mean, since you have seen it, right?
Yep.
So maybe you can tell what is the documentary is about, right? Yeah.
Okay, when I watched it, right, it really brought a bit of nostalgia back because we're talking about Substation, the iconic institution. I was there a few times celebrating New Year's Eve on the small alley beside Armenia Street with friends, and so yeah, it brought back all those things, that garden space at the back with live performances. But the film really showed the underground scene of that era. To us, maybe wasn't that really underground because we're kind of like quite familiar with that.
You were in the scene.
Sort of in, right? Not so in as some people
like
in this room.
supporting, our friends who were performing back then,
Performing on
right?
stage,
Yeah, okay.
half naked with a big afro hair. But no, we're not that into the scene. But I was, we're spectators to it. But some Singaporeans are really, to them probably it's the underground.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting how in the film that message was really being pushed, like it was an underground movement back then in Singapore.
The thing is, it wasn't like, showcasing the underground movement, yes, but also it's actually to showcase, to show that, the only way for all these people who has got like, some suppressed emotions to, certain things that's not fair in Singapore and all that was through this platform. yeah, that was actually what.
Well,
Why do you decide to do it?
Well, we actually originally, I have to say that I approached Abdul Nizam because I knew he was not only a filmmaker, and I'd been wanting to work with him for many years,
Okay.
but he was also a musician,
Musician,
in some bands here that were quite well known in a certain period. And so we actually did a shorter version of the film, which was nothing like what the film is now.
Yep.
And so we had all this footage, and I always told Nizam, because after we finished the first version, that we would make it into a feature documentary. And then, of course, in 2015, he passed away. So we had actually on our shelf for several years, and then I think probably in 2018, we because speaking with the director, my partner, and also the writer Mark, who was very interested in the scene, because we also looked at the social aspect and the space aspect of the film, and I think what came up the most for us was the DIY thing,
Yeah.
which the film ended up being very DIY at the end. So it was me contacting other band members, other production houses that were involved in that period of the 90s and the 2000s to get footage. And we got footage from everything from U-matic tapes to beta tapes, which we had to convert. But the whole thing, I think, for us, it was, it sounds very cheesy to say a labor of love, but we did it with really almost no funding. So what we did get in the bits of funding from a university in the UK, we used to pay rights for footage and photographs, but also we had this generous collaboration, of people like like Muse and like also other filmmakers who generously shared their footage, and band members who had their live performances that we had to basically digitize.
Right.
But I think first and foremost for me, it's a sort of having not been born in Singapore. I lived here so long, and getting to know the scene through people like Kaz, who we work with and as our audio post specialist, a sound design and all that, and having attended some of his performances, and then him introducing us to other people, and then it becomes like sort of a chain reaction thing. I think for us, it's a little bit our sort of love letter to Singapore, because we were not born here. And it's a love letter saying that, I think there are so many different people, diversity here.
Yeah.
So it's not I can't say it's my scene, but the musicians and the art that came out of it, I could relate to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest challenge to me probably is getting all those footages.
Getting the footages is one thing, but putting a story from that footage is the difficulty. That's what took, because getting it, I just had to make calls, pick it up, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's most of them are through people that I know very well or almost very well. And then, but it's saying like, okay, I have this footage. And then I had also the footage that was shot by Nizam
Right.
in 2015 and 2014. And then saying, well, what story can we tell from all this that would also respect what he represented? And I hope we got through that with the film, because for sure we kind of delved a bit further into this, sort of the social history of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's something, having known him, the bits that I do know of him, was sort of this this love of the people, this community that was built out of this DIY
Right.
community.
It looks very close-knit community, doesn't it?
Yes and no. I think, especially now, because we did insert some of the younger bands. It's very,
Yeah.
very different now, the scene. If you speak to the ones that have been around for 25 years, it's very different, the scenes
Yep.
now. I think because the savviness of also the social
Correct.
media,
Yep.
right? Knowing also how to connect sort of brands with their performances.
Right.
That was not something that was, when
Yeah.
Nizam started this, it was definitely not the
Back
scene.
then it's a bit more raw,
Yeah.
a bit naivety in their approach.
Well, I think the naivety actually helped.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when you don't know that you have barriers, you'll actually do things. But if you're constantly aware that there are barriers,
Yeah.
you won't do them.
Yep.
Because you'll be stopped.
Correct.
But not knowing that actually was what I think was the impetus for them to go out and really go out and do it.
It's an interesting one part, our boy, the musician, the studio guy.
Yes.
Right, he said he set it up and not knowing what to do with the hardware that he has.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
all trial and error.
Yeah, I think it's very beautiful what he says, and I think even some of the band said that. Like when for example you have I think two members who didn't even know how to play the bass, they would just be shown where to put their frets, their
Yeah.
fingers on the fret. I think a lot of that, there's a beauty in that, and it's sort of I think
Everything
that's
is like
seen.
self-taught.
Yeah, but there are a lot of self-taught musicians, but I
Yeah.
think it's the idea of wanting to go out there and perform
do
it.
it.
Yeah, that's
and
another
perform
thing.
it,
Yeah.
And so that part
That
is.
takes lots of courage.
I think a lot of courage, but I think they were having lots of fun.
Yeah, too.
I think they were having lots of fun. I mean, the gigs that you wouldn't know except
Yeah.
unless you got a text message.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I
yeah.
went to a few of
Very
those.
exclusive.
Yeah, in a way, it's very exclusive. And I think it is. I think it was. I'm not sure it's still in the film, but I think it's the idea of. It's not about changing others' perception
Yep.
of you being in a different place. I think it's about the coexistence of that and acknowledging that we are all could be different, but we
Yeah.
all have things that we want to achieve in our
Yeah.
lives, whether it's through creativity, through music. Yeah,
So this film took how many years
but it's not a
to
question.
finally, say it's a complete product?
Well, I guess it was like 6 years, I guess, because we launched it at the Singapore International Film Festival in 2021, and we actually, and Nizam passed away in 2015, but about 6 years, more or less, yeah.
Seems that you do make some emotional investment into this project. Is that the case for all of your projects, or is there only special ones like this where?
Well, I think to be able to do something that you believe that you did it well, I think you do have to put a little bit of your personal interest in there, and of course emotions plays in there, and because we did a film that we also collaborated with Muse, was called Malam,
Yep.
which is a fiction feature film, and that I think had kind of a slow burning start, but now is actually being screened in several places, Sri Lanka, now in the UK, several screenings in the UK,
Yep.
and I think it's like a lot of things, how can I say, you put your emotion, yes, but I think you do have to take a step back.
Yeah.
Because somewhere if you see this as you said, like your profession or your job, and you're running a company, you do have to be very objective and see, okay, this is working or not. And sometimes even things that at the moment when you release it don't work could take a while to
Yeah.
take off. Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm also maybe quite a sucker for projects that maybe are not necessarily the big bonanza Marvel kind of thing. But that I wouldn't mind doing those things. But it's just, I guess the people that I interact with,
Yeah.
that I connect with, are more about. I guess people have sort of softer voices.
So when you have a project in front of you, somebody puts something on your table, how do you assess that you're going to do it? Pick it up. You look at, okay, this one will have the potential to make some money, or is it like, oh, this is good, something that I like in my interest? What are your boxes that you need to tick before you take on a project?
Well, I think it's the first thing that you said. Somehow either the script or the people involved in the project I can connect with. I mean, the thing that you're saying, making money, I mean, that's an interesting thing because film is an intangible art, right? So it's not like I'm going to make this sculpture or I'm going to make this chair. A lot of films that, are, people think will make a lot of money don't. And other films that were done on smaller budgets do make a lot of money. So I think it's not so easy. It's a little bit, like, like literature. I think it's the same thing. And you don't know, I guess maybe there are some best-selling authors, but there are also sometimes things that come out of a surprise, out of the dark and stuff like that. But as for, what connects, I think a lot of it has to do with maybe understanding the trajectory of the person who brought the project to us.
For Seen and Unseen, what's your wish for it to do, or where you want to see it going?
Well, I think this is a project that I really want to see be seen by Singaporeans.
I
Intergenerational.
I feel
If
too,
it doesn't
yeah.
go international,
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me, because it was, like I said to you, our love letter too. And because I think it could be interesting to see, like, a father son watching this,
Yeah.
a teenage son and maybe the father was involved in bands. I mean, not necessarily as a musician, maybe as, I don't know, somebody who like organized the gigs or whatever. But to know that this was happening, and that, and then that this, even that scene, a lot of the people branched out to do film,
Yeah.
to do all kinds of other things, creative also. But it's really just, for me, it was really for the Singapore audience. Yeah.
What about you?
Thank you for doing it for Singaporeans, Panuksmi.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
right?
because it
Like-
has to be. I mean, like, the both of them. Michelle's, Canadian, and
Yeah.
she's Indonesian, and
Right.
yeah, I mean,
Well, I was told, I can't remember who told me. I guess one of my colleagues did. It's like it'll be I wouldn't say easier, but a foreigner, a person outside looking in, can see a better picture than a person living through that.
because we are so into it, right? That we actually don't see the bigger picture in a way.
Yeah. Do you see that
Do I believe
as well?
that?
Yeah.
I think for the way this particular documentary was structured and produced, yes. But I think there are ways, even if you're really connected to something, because most documentaries that work, somehow there's a connection between the filmmaker and that subject.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of films, for example, people living through, I don't know, war, for example. I mean, I remember there was a film done by a young, I think she's Syrian or she's Afghanistan. So she was there and she was having a baby during, there was a war. But what I'm saying is that she was living through it, and she shot it with her camera, with her small, with her phone and small cameras and all this, following this whole, her sort of like going through that experience. I don't think that could have been done by somebody.
somebody
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I mean,
understand.
if it's like a personal account, of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, yeah.
So, any new projects coming? Or are you looking forward to working on something?
Well, I'd rather sort of like not jinx anything, because to tell you the truth, yes, I am working on two feature films
great.
I'm developing, but I don't like to jinx it. And,
Okay.
yeah, well,
Do you
it's not
guys actually
development.
look for projects, or most of the time it kind of like comes to you?
Sometimes I reach out, but sometimes I do reach out, but yeah, sometimes people come to us. Yeah. And I mean, I guess because we are not a studio here, we're not a big, we often have to kind of decline because it really, because we also are very realistic, and if we think, for example, it's something outside of our sort of priority of interest, then to go, because a film, to get it from, from script to screen can easily be, 6 years.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 3 to 6 years. Like Malam was about 4 years. So I think it has to be something that you really believe in. Yeah, for sure.
So, for someone
Anyway.
who hasn't got the passion in it, you think they can survive in the industry? Like, is it a job? Like, someone who comes in, like, oh, I'll try it for a few years and see how it goes. Or you really have to have, certain passion and interest in the industry to really, go the long way.
Well, what do you mean as a producer?
As
I
a
mean,
producer, yeah.
Yeah, but there are different producers. You can be a producer for television, then you have a salary every
Yeah.
month, right?
Yeah.
I think if you want to work in the independent sector,
yeah.
you do have to somewhere be a little bit crazy. And
Sadistic.
sadistic, no, I don't believe in flagellation. But anyway, I think you have to be a little bit crazy, but you really do have to believe in what you're doing, because it can't be on the basis of just making money. Like you say,
Right, yeah. It's just a job. Come
Yeah,
in
it
this
definitely is
morning
not.
and
Yeah, it's not just a
can be that as well.
because you do take it home.
Yes.
You do take it home
Yeah.
with you.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Right.
not, you can't disconnect.
It's not
from
the
it. Yeah.
9 to 5 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can if you're working, for example, for the television broadcasters
Yeah.
or things like this. Then it is quite
So it's quite a wide scope then, right? Under the title of producer, you can be this, or you can go the independent way, or you can do the big
Yeah,
film?
because like, even producers at an agency is different from,
okay.
And also like for the station, if they call themselves like post producers, they'll be doing something else. Yeah. It's not like the full scale.
All right, so we get to know a bit more about you before we let you go. Just quick 5 questions.
Okay.
All right, not much thinking to be done. Food, Western or Asian? Come on.
Well, Asian is broad and Western
okay,
is broad.
Southeast Asian then. We
Okay.
are more familiar with Singapore,
Yes.
Indonesia.
Okay, Southeast Asian.
Okay, Western or Southeast Asian?
Southeast Asian.
Southeast Asian, cool. Movies, cinema or home?
For the experience, cinema.
Cinema. Okay. Films, genre, you have 4 to choose from. Horror, comedy, historical based, or romance?
Period. Historical.
Okay, I guess. Horror can be thriller.
Yeah.
I like thrillers.
Ah,
Yeah, I like
okay.
thrillers.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have to
James
recommend.
Bond kind of a thriller?
Well, sort of like thriller in the sense of, I don't know, if you look at old films like
Cannibal.
sort of Chinatown by Roman Polanski, or even more recently, for example, I like things like The French Connection.
The new
there's a
one?
bit
The
of-
newer version?
The original version. There's a newer version.
Yeah, the one with the more sleek cars.
Oh, I didn't see that one. I've only know the one that was done by William Friedkin with
I think
Gene
that's- showing on?
Hackman
That's a
Netflix.
the revised version. Cinema.
Oh, cinema.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's your favorite movie that I have to ask you? All time. If you have to choose one, definite one favorite movie.
I hate that question because I change my mind every year. Which one is my favorite film
But for today.
for today? Well, for today, I liked a lot. Let's see. I really don't know because I can tell
Okay,
you.
top three then.
Top three. Okay.
Yeah.
I like a lot. An American Friend by Wim Wenders.
Okay.
I also like more recent films. I'm not sure. I also like what's the other? I like Husbands by John Cassavetes. And what did I see also? I want to name a woman filmmaker here. Being a woman, I'm thinking, and I know there are some really good films. I'm just trying to get the name right. I like films by Claire Denis. She's a French director who's done some really good films. And her last 2 films, I'm trying to think of the title right now, but I guess the last few films of Claire Denis I like a lot also.
Okay, cool. If one of your kids come up to you one day and say, "Mommy, I want to be a producer. I want to do what you want to do." What do you say to that? Yes or no?
I know for a fact they will never ask me that.
But if they do.
Well, I said good luck.
Okay.
Go for it. I don't know. I think my parents never stopped me, so I don't think I would ever stop my kids.
Yeah. Okay. I have to ask you this question, but I guess I will kind of like guess what you're gonna answer. Rewind 30 years back. Will you still join this industry?
It's hard to say. I don't know. I sometimes dream of just having a
Simple life.
cafe and a bookstore
Yeah.
combined.
Yeah.
I think, and I mean, I
I
just
think
love.
that's everyone, almost everyone.
Yeah, a cafe and a bookstore.
Cafe and a bookstore.
But I know that it would be a tough endeavor here in Singapore because
Right.
there are some really good cafes and bookshops are really tough.
Yeah.
And there are a few that are standing, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think that would probably be where I would head towards. But something also linked. I don't know if there's ever been here in Singapore, but in Montreal there have been like cafes where you had a little cinema hall attached to it, which was only had like 30 seats.
But I thought it now, they have one here, right? At Ansiang. Is it still?
I don't know. That's gone, I think.
Oh,
Even
yeah?
the one, I've been to that one. Yeah, they had that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like a
Cafe,
bar restaurant
yes.
downstairs. Yeah, on Ansiang. I haven't heard about it for years, but I know it'd be really too. I think that would be tougher than
Yeah.
being a producer in a way. The hours is probably worse preparing for all that. Yeah. But
Okay. Thank you very much, Panuksmi, for
You're very
being
welcome.
our guest today.
you're very welcome, both of you.